So that is the practice that's very common, and many organizations do it this way, where it's one large list. Doesn't matter what you engage with, be it year end you gave the donation, or Ramadan, or Qurbani, or for your women's campaign, or your monthly contribution, they're all into the one bucket. Why it's important to segment, and ways you can segment will really take your revenues to new heights. And I will share some statistics and data with you that'll really help you to take this. So if you're not directly responsible for managing your email marketing, this is a conversation that you should have with your teams about working towards segmenting, and how do you segment it. And we'll talk about some of those.
I think we have a person whose hands is up. I think Sister Zahira, maybe.
Okay, sure.
I was just mentioning, I used a reaction to show that we do definitely have mailing lists in our organization.
Wonderful, wonderful.
Love that.
So some ways to segment is your desired communication frequency. So you will find, and you have to do your testing. When you send out an email, you will find that some of the recipients of those emails are generally always opening your email and are interacting with your content. You will find them clicking different things in the emails. They've clicked on the link, or they might have clicked on one of your articles, and so on. So understanding the desired frequencies that someone prefers, you can also segment your list based on that. So if someone only wants to receive urgent appeals, or only wants to receive content that is beneficial, or they only want to receive programming information, so you can segment your lists. Number two, programming interests. There are a couple of ways to do this. Number one, you might have someone who donated to your Education for Children campaign, and it happens to be, when your conversations you learned that it's a mother of 3 or 4 kids. So you segment them based on their program interest, which is they like to give towards education campaigns, and B, they are a mother, so they put into a category. So in the future, if you are ever running a campaign for specifically giving out information, or another campaign targeting education or women's rights, or issues that are happening that are pertaining to them, you can then target an audience that is going to be warm to that content. You also should look at segmenting your list based on giving status. And I have found a lot of value in this, where you have donors that may be engaging with you that are regulars, who are giving to you every year. And I know a lot of organizations review this on an annual basis. Have we retained these donors? Have they continued to engage with us? But you should also create lists of your donors that are lapsing, or are lapsed, or people who are what some we call premium or high value donors, or legacy givers. So this way you're not sending an email where you're asking, let's say, a $60 ask for them to subscribe on a monthly basis. That is maybe the ask you might give to your monthly donors, but someone who's giving you 10, 20, $30,000 of donations, you would want to make that ask more segmented towards their giving level. And you should also, if you can, to get to this level based on the softwares you use, roles in the organization. So are they a regular donor? Are they a monthly donor? Are they a volunteer with your organization? Or do they sit on the board? Are they the staff? Because then you have abilities to engage them in many different ways. And reason why segmenting is so important is you get higher response rates, and that's a direct result of segmentation. And research and marketers have found that segmented emails increase revenue by as much as 760%. So if you're making $1 now, if you segment and you start working on segmentation better, you're going to turn that into $7.60 over a little bit of time. It's not going to happen overnight, but this is a practice that we have to bring into our organizations. There are some amazing organizations and examples that are segmenting. I receive their emails and I sometimes wonder, how do they know these are my interests? But that's because based on my giving patterns, they have looked at my giving history. They've probably also looked at content that I've engaged with on the digital platforms, on their sites, on their social media content. and now they are targeting me based on that. So
So
this is very, very important.
if you don't mind, on this segmentation for small organizations, wouldn't it be very expensive to implement it?
Not necessarily. So there are tools, like I'll give you an example, MailChimp. It's all based on number of users that you have on your email database. Now you might be using Constant Contact, or you might be using one of the other platforms. You can segment lists, and it's very simple. So I'll use Sound Vision as an example. And then you have Justice for All, and you have a few other projects within the organization that are happening. You might have your the bookstore side of things, or the you know, the content side of things. When people engage on your website where they are coming to donate to you, then you put them into a category of these are donors. But if users are coming to your site, they're signing up only to receive information about things that are the injustices that are happening to the Rohingyas, for example, or they're engaging with specifically on topics related to political issues. You create another engagement list. Now, when the issue happened where the migration of the Rohingyas, for example, was a huge thing in the media, that would be an opportunity now to take your segmented list of 100, 200, 500, however many people, to go after them and say, this is the problem we're facing right now. You might do a general one to your mass list, but now you know you have an audience that is specific, who want to be engaged with this cause. So when you make an ask to them, the likelihood of you getting a return would be a lot higher than it going to your general list. So you have to segment it and go after. It's not expensive. It's very, very economical. It's easier to do as well. And I see a hand up from someone here. Go ahead.
Sorry, I'm called Sound Vision too. I need to fix that.
Sure.
I work in the children's programming at Sound Vision, and unfortunately, our database is contained in CVCRM, and it is not segmented very well. And so routinely, lots of emails go out to the universe, and that's not good in the long run. Is there any recommendation you have about surveying or stratifying to try to, you know, better identify and segment something that's already not been done like that?
Definitely. So there are ways you can start segmenting. One is, now a couple of clarifying questions. So this mass list that you have, emails go out to them periodically, right? So there are emails going out. Some may be fundraising asks, and some may not be. So you're sending content that you might engage with. So you will find, and I've not looked at your email, so I'm generalizing here. You might have different click links throughout the email. So you might have an article, you might have a piece written by someone, you might have something that you're selling, and different ways that you have your email laid out. Your service that you're using, does it show you data on what's been clicked in an email?
Some.
Some.
We're using Salsa, so it can be limited also.
Okay. So one of the great ways to segment without having to ask the people that are on your mailing list of where do you sit, do you want to only receive this, only receive that? Because ultimately, you also want to be able to make decisions based on looking at what they're engaging with, because they might say, I don't want fundraising asks. But you know that the content that you're providing, the stuff they're engaging with, these would be the right people to ask to support something. So you don't want them to be in a category that, no, I don't like fundraising. So you never really approach them for that. The way I would recommend it, and it's going to be a process over time, it's not going to be 100% segmentation overnight, is one of the strategies I've been using with IDRF, and I'll share that with you, is we have a mailing list of, you know, thousands and thousands of people, and it didn't used to be segmented, but over the last year and a half, we have been working to segment that. And how have we done that? Number one, based on giving patterns. So looking at our donor data and seeing that some of these individuals always give for a specific region. So they're always giving for African projects. So now I have created one segmentation based on giving pattern. The second is our database did not have demographic information, because a lot of times when you're taking donation, you're not asking for their age and you're not asking for their gender. So you never know where do they sit? So how did we start to figure that out and segment a little bit? Is you can do your sort of campaigns to engage them. So one of the things we did is we developed different kits and we put them on our website. And we said that if you are a parent and you want some content for your children to engage this Ramadan, please sign up here and we'll send you a really large package of stuff for your children. And we get their email, we get their name. So now we compared that to our database and we know that this person is already a donor with our organization and they are a parent. And from the name, we were able to segment them a little. So there's a few layers of things you would have to do. My recommendation is to use softwares that are going to help you segment some of these things and look at patterns. I've been using MailChimp in many organizations that I've been in, and I find their tools to be very supportive. Constant Contact is another one that I know people are raving about and talk about. That is great. And you probably also have certain people who are giving just in Ramadan. So you are engaging them very heavily in Ramadan. And we are all culprits to this. There's no segmentation for any organization in Ramadan. Everybody goes after everyone. And that's a very wide casting approach. Let's just throw as many darts as we can and see how many of them land. But when you focus like we have in organizations on the ground efforts, people focus just on major gifts or people focus just on planned giving. Why are these things important? Is because you are very much focused on these are the sectors or people I have to focus on and the results are high. Same applies in our online game and online approach. So it's not easy. I don't know the tools that you mentioned specifically, but I'm sure if it's a reputable marketing platform, that you should be able to create multiple lists within it.
Thank you.
No problem. That's number. So number 2 is timing of emails.
Oh, there's actually one more question, Omaya.
Okay, go ahead.
Right, late. I got confused between CST and EST, so my apology. I'm catching up. The question that I have for you, and I'm here, like I'm very close to ISNA Canada, so I'll be speaking with the ISNA Canada experience in mind. Now, the question that I have on like segmentation is like we already use like MailChimp and we have like various groups of, I'm gonna call it communication, and fundraising is like a purpose, like for like a goal for a communication goal that we have too. So the question that I have is like, is segmentation so we can take like a deeper dive into our like donor base and like try to sort of like inform them or give them the information based on their interest. Like we're trying to understand them and understand their interest level, right? Like you mentioned, like if they're a parent, for example, we will let them know about what we have for parenting, right? So and for example, if they are like, their heart is with the youth, we will communicate to them about that specifically. So we're not really like wasting their time with unnecessary information that they don't care about. For example, like a letter that goes to our members, for example.
Right.
Our donors not necessarily interested in that, right? So not all of them anyway. So is this like the purpose that we're trying, like you're trying like using this segmentation to strengthen the relationship and take it to a deeper level? Is this like the purpose?
So number 1 with segmentation, it is you are engaging with a lot warmer of an audience. So ISNA is an example. ISNA is a, and I'm assuming you're from ISNA Canada or ISNA US, which side?
No, it's Canada.
Okay, so I know ISNA Canada. I mean, I grew up there, especially in the ICC location. So understanding your organization, you have a school, you have a mosque, you have halal certification, you have counseling services, you have youth programming, you have Sunday school, you have after school programming, you have a bunch of different services that you're engaging and providing to the community. When it comes to fundraising, the part that usually people focus on is the 27th night, 25th night, 23rd night, whichever one of the nights the mosque does a large fundraising event for the center itself. Now, all the data that you gather from that night or those 5-6 nights of fundraising, you can now create a segmented list that these are mosque supporters. These individuals strongly believe in supporting the work of this organization in Ramadan and throughout. However, you might have some parents who are just engaging with this center for Sunday school. So having a segmented list of Sunday school parents who are bringing their children at all times for different things, when you offer youth programming that's outside of the Sunday school, you know that the audience that will probably engage with that content more than the general list is the parents who are bringing their kids to these things. Whereas someone who might be signing up for your counseling services or coming to meet the imams for different things, when you're offering workshops that are related to counseling or therapy or marriage or parenting or whatever the case may be, you have another list that is a lot warmer. What we end up doing as organizations is we think, okay, well, all of these segments fit into the general mailing list. So why segment in the first place? Like we'll just blast everybody. But the reason is the and we'll talk about this is that the subjects and what you say in the email have a lot to do with if a person will or will not engage with your content. If it's always understood by this person receiving this email that it's going to be another general email, it's going to be another fundraising ask, the likelihood of them probably not opening it is very high. So segmentation, the results of segmentation are higher open rates. You're actually talking to a person who's interested in your service. Look at it from a retail kind of space, right? When I'm walking in a mall and I'm just window shopping, I'm not actually going into the store, then the sales rep is probably not going to approach me. They're not going to walk out of the store, come outside and try to bring me in. But if I'm in the store, if I walk into that store, then they know there's a chance, there's a likelihood that I am interested in something that is in that location. So looking at this from an online world, you have a person who's walked into your location, who has engaged with certain programming that you engage in. The likelihood of them engaging with that program again is much higher than you trying to do a wide cast and go after everybody over and over. It takes more resources, more time, more costs, and you can reduce a lot of those by segmenting.
I just had a question actually. I'm from CCMW again.
Yeah, go ahead.
Sometimes, so we are on the verge of getting a new database, Donor Perfect, and we feel that sometimes may not be able to capture the change that our donors have. So let's say you have a donor who's a student, but has changed and has become employed. So how often do you need to kind of update your database, and what is a good way to do that? Like, so how do you ask the donors the right questions, and how often?
Yeah, it's that is a struggle everybody faces. So no organization is capturing your like employment status or education status when you're filling out a donation form. But that's work that your teams and staff and people would have to do in research. So we have tools and platforms like Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and other tools. And there are actually tools out there that'll break down the donors in US specifically. I know I was helping an organization in the US and I found that the public data available to US organizations is a lot more than what's available to Canadian organizations. I found in one of um, the donor management platforms when I was looking at their data, they had information like which charities they donate to outside of their own charity, what political campaigns have they donated to, what properties do they own, and these are things that are getting pulled from the public records. Unfortunately, in Canada, we don't have that much detail from where people are giving. We can see what organizations are doing, but individuals, it's tough. So the ways you would have to clean your data, it's a ongoing process. In our organization, we have someone who is on a monthly basis going into the database, looking at duplicate records, removing those, fixing up, spelling issues, making sure those things are clean. Looking at, is there relationship links? So you see two addresses that are matching up. Okay, is that an error or is there actually a relationship there? Is it a husband and a wife or a mother and a father? Or you have to always be looking at improving the data that you have. inputs will result in outputs, right? So if the inputs are flawed, the things that you have in your database are incorrect, then the outputs that come out and the fundraising results that come out are going to be based on the inputs that you put in. So my recommendation is it has to be a process. You have to do some research. When you get into the thousands and thousands of donors, it becomes hard for you to maybe know the status change of every single individual. But the approach I would take is breaking it up. 70% of your donors are probably not in your premium category, and you might have 20 to 30% who are giving certain levels of 1,000, 2,000, 5,000 or more. You might start with them first because they're making up a large chunk of your revenue coming in. So you say, I want to know these donors better, assign it to a volunteer or a staff or someone to look further on LinkedIn, look at their professional networks, look at what data you can find online in the public space before getting into reaching out to the donor, asking for information that they might feel, what's the need? Why do they need to know my employment status or my marital status or and so on and so forth? So do as much as you can. In a non-COVID world, one of the things I used to do is whenever I met someone who was a donor face to face and I would have a conversation, I would take certain inputs that I received from them. If they're talking about, oh, I graduated from here and I used to work here, and I make notes of these things. So when I go back and I speak to our team, I can say, hey, here's some other information I found about this donor. Many of us let those things just go in conversation. We don't remember these things, but if you're in the space of fundraising, you always have to have a ear out for these things. You might hear certain interests they share. You find that every time you go to their city, they're always inviting you to the same coffee shop or the same restaurant. So you learn about certain preferences and interests that they have. So it's a lot of back and forth. And for people in leadership positions who are always meeting donors, that is something that you have to also incorporate into your online strategy. Take the offline information, bring it to your online teams, and make sure they're integrating that in. All right. So I want to cover the email section before we take a break. So I have about 6 or 7 slides. And if it's email pertaining questions, let me cover this. And right at the end, you can ask all your questions before we take your break. Timing of email. This is an area of discussion many organizations have. When should I send the email? Should I send it in the morning? Should I send it in the evening? Should I send it on a weekend? What's a good time? This guesswork for a lot of organizations is slowly being removed because of tools that are providing you data on when your emails are being opened. So the software that we use tells us that you can send this email now, or you can send this email based on the data we have about this individual and when they're likely to open their emails. So that's one way. The other way is you looking at it from an A/B test approach. So the way an A/B test works is you're not sure if an email is open in the morning or open in the evening, or in Ramadan, should you be doing it closer to iftar times or something? When should you be doing it? You can slowly build that data, and it's not going to be some science that is proven it's going to be at this time. You can send some emails in the morning, some in the evening, and you can look at the open rate and see what the open rate was on average. Or you could do, in specifically Ramadan, many of us send 10, 15, 16, 20 emails in that month. It's bombarded. And you'll find that every organization is doing it. You're not the only one. So in an inbox, if everybody says, hey, we're going to send our emails on Jummah because Friday everybody feels a little bit more pumped, they're feeling a little bit more religious, and we're going to send it right before Friday prayer. So that could be a strategy you use to say they're already in that mode, let me send the email. But if you're thinking this way, there's probably 5, 6, 7 others that are also. So you have to look at the open rates you're finding, and many of the tools will show you an email goes out, you might have a huge spike in the open rate in the first hour or two, and then it slowly starts to decline. And you find only maybe 10% or 15% of the people ultimately ended up opening that email. Another strategy that you should look at is how do we engage with those 80, 90% of the people who did not open our email? Why did they not open it? Was there something that we did that was not to their liking? This is where then you can take an email, that same email, change the subject line, change who it came from, or change some of the content or how it's laid out, and send it back out to those that did not open. So you're not bothering them. They haven't opened your previous email. See if anything you've done that's different that is resulting in now this group opening that email. And that'll give you an understanding of what things need to improve and what timings would work best. Subject lines, usually overlooked. It's made into a sentence sometimes where all you see is a big narrative, dot, 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 dot. People are unsure, should I even click this email or not? But 33% of all recipients decide whether they're going to open your email based on the subject line. Can you believe 1 out of every 3 people is going to decide if they're going to open or not open your email based on just the subject itself? And I get hundreds and hundreds of emails, and I'm sure you do as well. So if you're scrolling through your inbox, you're going to look at subject lines that really resonate and that sound important and that sound like they're more personalized than those that are saying 50% off, sign up now, come here and we'll help you. Something that is not really engaging is not going to get my attention to click on it. But if it's coming and it's sounding like a subject line that is directly talking to me as a recipient, then more likely that I will open it. And I'll show some examples of that when we get into some of the examples of the emails. So a couple of ideas you could use. One thing that you find that has worked for multiple organizations, I looked at some emails from Plan, from Oxfam, Save the Children, World Vision, some of the ones that shared their data, is that asking a question is a great way to engage that individual. So, or saying something like, you made this possible, or something that is really capturing as an individual their attention to get into opening that email. Number 2, you want to keep the subject line short. I'm finding in a lot of our organizations, there is this tendency to think that, well, let me get it all into the subject, because if they don't open it, at least they know what we're talking about. But that's not a good strategy. You want to keep it short, and you want to keep it ideally under 15 characters, and that's based on looking at optimal views for mobile, but also on desktop. You want to make sure that it's catching attention. And you want to express some urgency. You want to show in your email that there is some level of urgency, important, urgent, emergency, like, appeals that you're doing, help needed, need your help, or anything along those lines. That's going to really capture their attention. Personalization is also extremely important. Now, what we find ourselves doing with emailing lists is we write up a general email, we press send, it goes to everybody. Tools now give you the option of taking the first name, last name, entering other fields that will help you to make it more personalized, where we have in our database put certain experiences or certain things that they've donated for. So if an email goes out, it might say, dear so and so, thank you for engaging and giving us a donation for XYZ. It made a huge impact. Here's something that we'd like to share with you that you've done. So it sounds very, very personalized, but it's coming from a mailing platform, and all that data can be pulled by these tools, and it can then personalize it. It also has an impact. So 10%, you can increase your open rate and the impact that it has on that conversion by 10% just by personalizing it. Dear John, dear Mahmoud, dear Ahmed, even those basic personalizations make it a bit more meaningful. Now, your email should not just be a huge dump of everything your organization is doing, especially if you're trying to fundraise. You have to go at it from a lens of storytelling. You have to empathize, and the audience has to empathize with the content that you are sharing. They have to be able to connect with that story. So, we have organizations here that are specifically focusing on women's causes or Black Canadian Muslims or focusing on charitable efforts, you have to story tell and share so that the person, that me receiving that email, I can empathize with what I'm reading or who I'm screening, and I can connect with it. People donate to be part of something. They want to belong. They want to have involvement. So you have to make the reader feel like they're part of this cause. And it's always good to have a character so the person can relate and they can look at certain matching aspects, maybe the demographic, they're the same age. You might find that there are certain pain points that resonate with that individual. If you're sending emails to mothers and you happen to be also a mother yourself, you could share a personal story in that email. If you're writing content for youth, you could share a case study of a youth who's dealing with certain issues or facing certain problems. If you are here a relief organization, you can share a case study of someone from the field in Africa who is walking hundreds of miles to fetch water. So people can look at the cause, the issue, they can empathize, but you can also bring hope and a message of positivity.